My topic is political messianism as a source of national resilience. And let me start right away by the following statement. When people are in hardship, they put their faith in some messianic vision, in some messianic redemption in the future. And it's not incidental that when millions of soldiers found themselves in the trenches of the First World War in Europe, many of them have read John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress, the 17th century tale about Christian who goes through the hardships in the valleys and in the mountains and in hell. But there is always redemption at the end of his way. He walks from this world to that which is to come, and this is, of course, a source of hope, or a source of a redemption at the end of the road. Now, this very Christian motive has also been prevalent among Jews in the First World War. For example, Rabbi Avraham Cohen Cook, who later was chief rabbi in Free-State Israel, who lived during the war in England, defined the First World War as a war, a terrible Gog-Magog war, which is going to lead to messianic redemption at the end of the road. As he put it, legions and legions of them, of the fighting nations, with firmness of heart, they will arise and cry out, a people has arisen. The Jewish people has arisen. In other words, this is going to be a moment of redemption for the Jewish people, preceding the redemption of the entire universe. A people has arisen, has begun to be a nation that will release a flow of divine life to all worlds. Now, this messianic view, let me just say that in Judaism, messianism has never been as prevalent as in Christianity, but still, you know, this messianic motive has played an important political role as a motivating role in the nation-building process of the Jewish people, of the Jewish national movement. For example, Gershom Scholem, the great scholar of messianic movements, has rightly suggested that the messianic idea has proven itself an idea of highest effectiveness and relevance, even in its secularized forms. Every national movement of the 19th century, including the Jewish national movement, has used messianic motives as a source of recruitment, as a source of mobilization, as a source of enthusiasm. For example, as Jacob Katz, the great historian, has written, modern Jewish nationalism leaned heavily on the old messianism and derived from it much of its ideological and even more of its emotional appeal. Now, political leaders, especially those who are building nations after a national movement achieves independence, such as David Ben-Gurion in our case, understand the emotional appeal of messianism. As I've shown in my own book on Ben-Gurion and the intellectuals, Ben-Gurion was a totally secular leader, so much so that he was even labeled a Canaanite. I mean, he was as secular as could be. However, Ben-Gurion understood the importance of the messianic idea as a source of recruitment in the nation-building process. He declared, for example, that Israel is the creation of the messianic faith, but it is still in its beginning. In other words, the people of Israel in the 1940s, 1950s, should be endowed by messianic faith in their activities. So much so that when Israel was engaged in the Sinai War of 1956, he declared, for example, it's just one out of thousands of examples in the book, the halo of Sinai glowed over our soldiers' heads. In other words, the Messianic vision has served as a source of strength and invigoration and resilience in the nation-building process. Now, this obviously has been criticized by many because you see, if you are basing a nation-building process or politics in general on messianism, then everything you are doing becomes messianic and is being justified. And that's why scholars like theologian Martin Buber have criticized Ben-Gurion. As Martin Buber wrote, this politicization of life here strikes at the very spirit itself. He didn't like, of course, the application of the messianic idea from religion to politics. However, as those of us who are working on Ben-Gurion's heritage, and again, if I may just refer to an article I just published very recently, and I've shown it there, Ben-Gurion's political messianism has always been associated with universal values. And I would like to quote Tzvi Verblovsky, again, the great scholar of religion at the Hebrew University, who wrote that leaders of the Zionist movement, definitely that's true about Herzl, it's true about Ben-Gurion, secular leaders, leaders of the Zionist movement did not think in terms of the son of David riding on an ass, when they talked about messianism, but rather of civil liberties, equality before the law, universal peace. In other words, Rabbi Avraham HaKohen's Kook vision that the messianic redemption of the Jewish people is associated with universal values, such as the rule of law, civil liberties, universal peace. That was actually part of it was part and parcel of the Zionist ideology, of the Jewish national ideology. And then something happens. In May of 1967, Rabbi Avraham HaKohen Kook's son, Rabbi Tzvi Yehuda Kook, gives a speech in the Kook Center, called after his father, in Jerusalem. That's May 1967. And over there he says that he basically laments the fact that the land of Israel, promised by God to the Jewish people, is not in our hands, largely as a result of the armistice boundaries of 1949, which divided the land between Jews and Arabs. Where is our Hebron, the holy city of Hebron to Judaism? Have we forgotten her? Where is our Shechem? Where is our Jericho? Asks Rabbi Tzvi Yehuda Kook. And as history sometimes has it, a few weeks afterwards, on the 5th of June, 1967, Israel launches a preemptive strike as a result of being attacked by 3 Arab forces, and Hebron and Jericho and Shechem are in Israeli hands. And Rabbi Tzvi Yehuda actually becomes almost a prophet to a messianic movement known as Gush Emunim, and the messianic idea. You can see here two of the major leaders and their disciples of that movement, and the messianic idea has been actually stripped at this point of the universal dimension and turned into an ideology sanctifying the land of Israel. In other words, Jewish invigoration from now on is in the eyes of Gush Emunim and actually all these disciples of Tzvi Yehuda Kook, the invigoration of the Jewish people now depends on the settlement of the entire land of Israel, the God-given land of Israel. And if you are looking at the data, you can see that the beginning in 1976, when there was no one settler in the city of Hebron, that's when it begins. You know, when we reach 2018, we have today, and today we have about 500,000 settlers in the West Bank of the Jordan River, which is inhabited now by 500,000 Jews and by millions of Palestinians. And what that really means, and now I'm coming actually to the title of my talk, Political Messianism and National Resilience, what it actually means is that national resilience, in the eyes of many, especially the disciples of Gush Emunim, the national resilience in Israel depends on the fulfillment of the messianic dream of inhabiting the entire land of Israel. On the 1st of November, we are going to have elections, and there is a very good chance that the person you can see here in the picture, Itamar Ben-Gvir, may win quite a chunk of the vote of the Israeli electorate with the following program, which I just took out of his party's program. The party is called Jewish Power, Otzma Yehudit, and the platform says as follows: no leader or generation has the right to concede any part of the homeland. Implied by this is now an election program. Implied by this is that we do not want to lose the Jewish state through war, or through peace, or through Western democracy. In other words, national resilience is now not dependent anymore on Israel being the only democracy in the Middle East and so on. It's not dependent on its peace-seeking motives. It's now dependent on its fulfillment of the messianic vision of settling the land of Israel. Now, let me just conclude by saying that this, of course, is part of the thinking towards the elections, but there is also a criticism of that approach, and I decided to conclude by the words of my teacher at the Hebrew University for political philosophy, Ze'ev Sternhal, who shortly before his death wrote the following, and I'm going to conclude by that quotation. I frequently ask myself how a historian in 50 or 100 years will interpret our period, when he will ask, did people in Israel start to realize that the state that was established in the War of Independence on the ruins of European Jewry, and at the cost of the blood of combatants, some of whom were Holocaust survivors like himself, had devolved into a true monstrosity for its non-Jewish inhabitants? Thank you.